If there is one touchstone for millennials who grew up in the 90s, it is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, a show where 5 teens get granted superpowers from a disembodied alien head and fight a monster of the week using their karate, super suits, and of course, giant morphing dinosaur robots. The show provided an adrenaline rush so strong that I found myself practicing karate in my bedroom after episodes, and I'd argue that this show rests comfortably in the hallowed pantheon of 90s kid shows, alongside Pokemon and X-Men. Power Rangers likely seem stupid to modern audiences, constantly fed entertainment bred on nihilism and cynicism, yet frankly, there's something pure and unadulterated about the Power Rangers. It's a show where the heroes are people you could look up to as a kid. They're virtuous, physically capable, and most of all, cool. Not to mention the show's main theme amounts to what has to be the national anthem for an entire generation of kids. No matter how familiar the formula became, it never got old, and that's because there is something eternally gratifying about watching good overcome evil and heroes defeat villains with a sense of style and flair. And frankly, I can think of no better way of describing Astral Chain. It's a game that gives you the same feeling I had watching Power Rangers as a kid, that you're experiencing something that prioritizes your fun and enjoyment above all else, with a unique style that feels like you're watching a Sentai show. Let me see if I can show you what I mean. Before we get into the review, I think it's important to lay some ground rules. Reviews are for you, the listener, to help you know whether or not a product is worth getting. It's essential to be aware of a reviewer's bias when weighing a recommendation. So for myself, I would like to disclose the following. I am a big fan of action games, and I think they are an underappreciated genre within gaming. Too often, I think the gaming industry seems to praise games for their storytelling while gameplay takes a back seat. And for action games, especially Japanese action games, it feels like the gaming media penalizes them because they don't like their presentation or consider it stupid or juvenile. I'm not saying that action games can't come across as dumb or silly.
Been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
But I'm saying it doesn't matter when so many people love these games because of their confident style and presentation. And what's more, they offer unique gameplay experiences that I feel are unrivaled in other genres. Therefore, as much as I can, I would like to bring attention to some action games that I think are underappreciated, starting with Astral Chain. Astral Chain takes place in a world where a comet has hit Earth and opened up gates to another realm known as the Astral Plane. These gates consume most of the planet, corrupting people by turning them into monsters known as aberrations. But the greatest threat from the Astral Plane are these invisible monsters known as chimeras, which kidnap people and drag them back to the astral dimension. As the world falls to the Astral Plane, humanity manages to save itself by building a floating artificial island called the Ark. And it is here where our story takes place. You choose between a male and female twin and take on the role of a police officer in an elite task unit known as Neuron. Neuron agents fight with captured chimeras in the form of legions. With a new legion at your side, it is your job to turn a tide of the chimeric conflict, while exploring if a legion has the potential to be a partner or merely a chained monster. Legions are the beating heart of Astral Chain, being at the center of combat, exploration, and the plot. So it's safe to say that if you like what Platinum Games has done with the legions, then you will love this game. So let's talk about how they're integrated into the game's most important element. Astral Chain has the most unique combat system of any game I've played in recent memory. You essentially control 2 characters, the player character with the right trigger and the legion with the left. Tapping the left trigger will summon the legion, which will then attack whatever enemy is closest until they run out of meter. Hold down the left trigger while the legion is already summoned, you'll be able to maneuver it with the right stick while the player character remains stationary. You can use this to set up actions with the chain that binds the player character and the legion, jumping from one area to the next, binding enemies, and stopping charging foes. Pressing the right trigger will allow the player character to perform a combo with one of 3 weapons, a police baton, a greatsword, and a gun. During certain combos, the player will flash blue, indicating an opportunity for a sync attack with your legion. Press the left trigger during this moment and the legion will rush in for a cinematic attack. Sync attacks aren't just finishers, however, but can be combos where the player alternates between the left and right triggers. This system prevents the game from being a simple button masher while giving the player proactive control over the legions. Platinum Games took a huge risk with this system. It is not often that you have a game where you're controlling essentially 2 characters at once. However, I have to say it paid off greatly. It is different enough from the typical action game to stand out, without being so obtuse as to be unapproachable for new players. Naturally, this does raise the question of depth, or whether there is enough intricacy in the combat system to reward players who spend time mastering it, or simply to keep it entertaining through its lengthy playthrough. The short answer is yes, there is depth to the combat system, but explaining this will require early story spoilers, so heads up if you want to skip this section. Throughout the course of the game, the player will control 5 legions. There's the Sword Legion, your all-around starter, the Arrow Legion, your long-range attacker, your Rideable Beast Legion, the JoJo Arms Legion, and the heavy-hitting Axe Legion. Each of these legions opens up combat in exciting ways. Got an enemy that likes to play keep away? Grab them with the Arms Legion. Can't escape an attack in time? Use the Axe Legion's shield. Legions can be upgraded with both skills and abilities using materials you get from fallen enemies and side quests. Abilities let you customize your legion with passive abilities such as self-destructing if they take too much damage, or increasing their super armor. Skills are found in a skill tree and include both passive buffs and active abilities. You can equip 2 active skills in a legion that can be used at any time during a combat, after which they will be placed on a cooldown. Except for some skills that carry across each legion, most of them are unique and include things like Virgil's spiral swords and shields. The depth rests in learning how to perfectly customize your legion to fit your playstyle while also being able to use all legions to the fullest in combat. For example, while you can only have one legion on the field at a time, you can use the ability Unchained to have a legion fight independently for a few moments while you summon another legion to join the fray. Or say you have a legion you don't like using. Equip it with active abilities that grant you buffs such as faster attack and movement speed. When you summon it, quickly use those abilities and switch to another legion because the buffs will carry over. With all 5 legions, there are innumerable options at your fingertips, making tough fights feel like it's more about learning the optimal way to use your legions as opposed to just banging your head against unfair mechanics. For me, however, I mainly use the Sword and Axe Legion back and forth, only working in the others as necessary. There's a lot more to discuss than what I listed here: perfect calls, counters, special moves. This is simply a taste of what you'll be getting into with the combat. It's the main selling point of this game, and frankly, it's awesome. Platinum Games are developers who have sometimes struggled with presentation, either having to cut back on cutscenes or limiting the scope of their worlds. Astral Chain feels like the most complete game they've ever made. Cutscenes are plentiful, 90% of lines are voice acted, and there are set pieces in this game that rival the like of Uncharted or Last of Us. The only thing holding it back is being an exclusive to the Nintendo Switch, meaning that the game only runs at 30 FPS, which is less than ideal for an action game, and you will definitely see slowdown in key moments. However, even 2 years after its release, the visuals look amazing to this day. And it feels like Platinum Games made a game that doesn't just look good for a Nintendo Switch game, but looks good in general. But beyond simply having the resources to build a graphically impressive game, the developers have worked to create a unique world that has a distinct identity. Character and enemy designs are very strong, as I mentioned, evoking elements of Japanese Sentai, or for American audiences, Power Rangers. Legions have had the most design effort put in, and it's immediately clear at a glance what each one is capable of. The only failing in the Legion design is the idea that they're supposed to be your partner, given that they are leashed to you with a chain around their neck. At most, you could call them pets, at worst, chain beast. This is something the developers struggle with, as made clear in their blogs. See, originally, the Legions were simply going to be captured chimeras. However, when they decided to elevate them to the role of your partner, they gave them more heroic designs. It's more funny than anything else, as every moment of solidarity between you and your Legion is undercut by the fact that they have a literal chain around their neck, and the animation of some of the Legions made clear that they don't want to be there. This isn't a big deal, and frankly, it's not something that really gets in the way of anything, but it is something that I think you'll notice throughout the game. Designs for main and side characters are distinct, though fairly generic. However, they get the job done, and you can also change the visual elements on your own character and legions by unlocking equipment and color schemes from side quests and killing golden slimes. Environments are very detailed, though you will see many multiple times, especially the police station, which serves as your hub, and Harmony Square, perhaps the most detailed area in the game. The astral plane doesn't hold up as well as other environments, which is unfortunate since you will be spending a lot of time there. It contrasts nicely with the blue tones of the human world with stark red and black hues. You will quickly grow tired of this environment, as there is really nothing to look at except red rectangles, which is wearisome when one playthrough can last 30 hours and you spend almost half of your time in this dimension. They've also paid attention to a lot of detail with how your character interacts with the environment. For example, where there have been chimeras in an area, despite them being invisible, you can see that they leave some sort of distortion on the ground. Because legions are technically chimeras, they have the same effect. Now, the idea of the legion being invisible isn't fully fleshed out, such as when you ride the Beast Legion, it should look like you're floating on nothing to regular people. Now, without getting into spoilers, I find the story in Astral Chain to actually be pretty good. Plotting is fairly generic and comes across like a seasonal anime, but the writing team did a good job centering the game's pathos on the relationship between the twins. This is even more impressive when you consider that the player character actually doesn't speak, and the relationship is completely carried by the voice acting of the other twin.
Why'd you have to play hero like that? I'm Dad's kid, just like you are. I don't need any help killing chimeras.
There is an arc here between the two of them that is strong enough to carry you through the anime nonsense towards the end. I should say that in my opinion, proper fulfillment of the twins' arc rests on a choice you have to make at the end of the game. It is rare that I would say there is an objectively wrong choice in a video game, as most of it simply comes down to player preference. However, the ending of this game basically prevents you with a choice that to me equates to responding like an actual human being who loves their sibling, or a psychotic anime protagonist. But your mileage may vary. Outside the main story, the writing is actually very good and helps to flesh out the world. The writing in Astral Chain is good because all character interactions and dialogue are written with a consistency and tone that manages to be both informative and engaging. Characters are largely one-dimensional, but they're written with an earnestness that managed to win me over. The key to enjoying this game's writing is knowing what you're getting yourself into. This is not meant to be a prestige drama, but if you have no trouble enjoying your typical action game or anime, you'll enjoy this. Level design is probably one of the more interesting elements of Astral Chain. Most action games are linear and just throw you into room after room where you fight waves of enemies. This is sufficient for games that are almost exclusively focused on gameplay and typically last 8 to 10 hours. I don't want to be doing side quests with Dante, I want to be killing demons. Astral Chain, however, is 30 hours. And a lot of that runtime is due to the fact that the game borrows heavily from JRPGs. There are 12 files in Astral Chain, each lasting from 30 minutes to a couple of hours. For most files, there will be an investigatory phase where you go around gathering clues to solve a case at hand. These segments make you actually feel like a futuristic police officer, from picking up litter, searching for missing persons, and even a little police brutality thrown in for good measure. Side quests are plentiful during the segments and are denoted by blue and red dots. Blue dots have you interact with a character who will have a unique storyline for you to follow, and for the most part these are varied and pretty interesting. I can say with confidence that no two side quests were the same. Be aware that you only get one chance to complete a side quest properly, mess up and you'll have to replay the file. Red side quests are combat related. I have to say that these are the best side content that the game has to offer. Not only do they contain more enemies to fight, but they also have hidden bosses that you'll only encounter if you do these side quests. What's more is that the level design actually encourages a second playthrough when you have all 5 legions to solve environmental puzzles and gain access to areas that were blocked off before. Not to mention, when you beat the game, a whole new branch of quest lines open up for you to complete. I think this level design works really well for Astral Chain. It pulls from the best of open world RPGs, but I'm not sure I would want to see this repeated in other action games. You see, these investigatory sections can feel pretty long even if you skip all the side content. And while on my first playthrough I didn't mind because it was all new and exciting, on my second I found myself just wanting to get back to the combat. Instead, I was collecting clues to a mystery I'd already solved and just waiting for the next time I would be able to use my legion. Now let's talk about something that is near and dear to my heart. I love talking about difficulty in games. And I can tell you that this game is not meant to be hard. It is one of the most accessible action games out there. On normal difficulty, you get 3 instant revives during encounters that make it so you can literally get back up after being killed mid-fight. Obviously this makes things much easier than they otherwise would have been, but I don't think it completely removes the challenge from the experience. Encounters seem to be designed around this mechanic, so they can actually go for a pretty long time, having multiple phases that unfortunately you'll have to redo if you die. The hard mode, however, that you unlock after beating the game is Feast or Famine. You're either completely destroying your enemies or getting wrecked. This is because enemy health pools seemingly remain the same as they do on regular difficulties, but they hit harder and you get no instant revives. But because you'll be playing with upgraded legions, you never feel underpowered. Instead, this hard mode does what the best difficulty modes do in games. They make you better at the game. This difficulty is undercut by liberal item usage. Again, I don't think this game was ever meant to be a terrible grind. The fact that you can use healing items at essentially any point in time without consequence and stock your character up with vending machine items that give health buffs means that oftentimes you'll be able to power through encounters by spamming healing items. Overall, Astral Chain is not a very difficult game, however it does offer enough challenge on its hard mode that it will make you a better player who has to explore more of the combat system to get through some of the more difficult encounters. Lastly, let's look at the nitpicks. These are critiques that don't ruin the experience, but are nevertheless annoying and something you should be aware of if you're going to play this game. First off, this game suffers from what many anime-style action games suffer from: screen clutter. Fights can get clustered with particle effects and characters moving around that it's hard to see what's actually going on. This is exacerbated by a camera that oftentimes feels just a little too close. The UI is pretty messy, with the font being extremely small, and because you'll spend a lot of time in these lists upgrading your Legion and cycling through a bunch of upgrades, I wish they could have gone with something more streamlined and effective. Unfortunately, the biggest issue I have with this game is that it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. Hear me when I say this. This is one of the best new IP I've played in recent memory. I don't know if the Nintendo Switch has the perfect audience for action games. I know that Nintendo likely funded this game, but I can't help but feel that this game would have done a lot better if it were on the PlayStation 4 when it came out. I just can't shake the feeling that this game didn't get its fair shot. Hopefully this review can change that and show you why in 2022, Astral Chain is a game that you should be playing. If you have played the game, let me know in the comments below where you would rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you found this review helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button. This really helps out the channel. This has been Harlan Gaming, out.